Greetings, everyone. Today we have friends joining us from around the United States and Ireland for our newest episode of Hibernian Talks with host Tim Noonan from Chicago. Joining Tim today is Ricky O'Ra, author of Northern Heist. Also joining us on our panel is Martin Galvin, Ancient Order Hibernians Freedom for Ireland Chair, and Chris Cook, Ancient Order Hibernians State President for North Carolina, as well as our National Digital Coordinator. Tim?
Thank you, Danny. Welcome, Ricky, to the Hibernian Talks series. Your book, Northern Heist, has just been published on April 6th. We wish you could be here today, but we understand that due to your being an ex-prisoner, that you were unable to attain a America visa. But I wanted to wish you a welcome on behalf of the Hibernians.
Am I of it? Tim, thank you so much. I do, but while I'm around, go Wakas and Donor Don Carusha, I'd like to say I'm so thankful for this invitation from the AOH. And it's just great to be talking to you.
It's great to have you on with us. I appreciate it. I know you're busy, and we're getting a lot of wonderful reviews on your book. Northern Heist has been receiving real high praise from the Sunday Times, the Irish Times, the Belfast Telegraph, and matter of fact, from our own Wall Street Journal. They said what it also has a laugh out loud humor, unexpected plot twists, and a great deal of heart. Overall, confidently told tales seem destined for a big screen, and the attention of this debut book is getting already confirms it. Meaning, I think I butchered that this book looks like it's destined for film and greater things. So, without giving anything away, the plot and everything, can you tell us a little bit about the story?
Yeah, well, this book is basically founded in the Northern Bank robbery that occurred in December 2004. And what happened was that a gang of bank robbers held two bank officials hostage in their homes, held their families as well, and forced them to go into the bank, right, in order to rob the bank. But it was a totally different bank robbery from anything we'd ever seen before. What they did was they made one of the bank robbers bring out a huge hold all full of money. It was actually £1 million on it. And he brought it out. He walked up to the end of the street, set it up a step. A guy sat down beside him, took the hold all, and walked away with it. And they walked away with £1 million. And in that second, and this is what was unique about this robbery, in that second, the robbers knew that there was no cops, there was no surveillance, that this bank was there for the taking. And on his way up the street, the robber phoned the boss guy, and says, bring down the van. They brought a huge big lorry down to the side of the bank. They phoned the bank, the two bank officials, and they said to them, fill trolleys full of money and pretend that it's rubbish, which is exactly what they done. So they then brought the money up from the vaults. The vaults was about four floors down. They brought them up in the lifts. They pushed them out. The guys in the van, there was a back tail which was lowered. They pushed the trolleys on, came up, pushed the money into the big lorry. And when the lorry was nearly full, it drove away. And in that instance, they got away with about 15 or 16 million pounds. And not content, this is unbelievable, not content with 15 or 16 million quid, they emptied the lorry and they sent it back for another load. So they came back again, right? And they done exactly the same thing again, filled the lorry up, and they went away with that as well. And they got clean away. And the police only found out about this robbery when the bank robbers decided to tell them. And at the time, and that's the basis of the book. It isn't. That's the gem. That's the nucleus of the actual action, and it revolves around that. And the spin on it is that everyone believed that this robbery was done by the IRA, and that was the police. That was the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland. the Prime Minister of Great Britain, the Irish Prime Minister, everyone, the Gardaí, everyone believed that this was done by the IRA, and so did I, because I didn't think anybody else was capable of a stunt like this. It was just incredible to me. I mean, and it's not, and I say it's not politic to say this. I mean, you could criticize me for it. To me, it was a work of art. It was beautiful. If I was a bank robber, I'd say, "Oh, let me in on this." But it was, you know, but I'm not a bank robber, not anymore.
Well, actually, that's a good point. Part two is, do you mind reading a little bit about the book, maybe like around that period, you know, of what that actually was going on?
This is the second time that the truck has come back and filled up a second time, and there's two guys driving the truck. The big guy driving is a big heavy guy called Ambrose, right? And his mate beside him. But before that, Russians, they took the money, the first one, away, and they put it in a scrapyard. They hid it in a scrapyard. Russians looks at his watch as Ambrose, that's what you call the driver, drives out of City scrapyard. A 9-minute turnover, he notes, not bad. A question has been nibbling at him ever since the boys left the bank. Can a move be too easy? There must be 10, no, 15 million pounds in ciggies already, and no sirens, no distracted cops, no roadblocks, no RAF. Not even, it seems, an emergency services call to say that the biggest outlet in the Northern Bank chain is being systematically emptied of money. How unusual is that? Exquisitely unusual. A euphoric mind booms, bring it on, bring it on, bring it on. Russians adjusts his rear mirror. With no money in the loot lorry, he takes an alternative route back to the bank, and they load up the money for the second run. In the bank's vault, Liam, who's one of the employees, walks around the trolley, sealing it with industrial cling film. He receives another phone call from Russians. How's it going there? Not good, Jack. He knows him as Jack. Not good at all. We'll need more time if you want. If you want 4 trolleys, we haven't got more time. How many are there already? 2. Get them out now. Your rubbish van will be waiting. Russians hangs up as he pulls into the end of Hillier Street. The Reverend Roy Salters, who is a Bible thumper, is still outside the bank and is earnestly entreating a bespectacled young man in a blue raincoat to see the light. The young man's friend's arm is rotating behind the preacher's back in a wind-up motion, but Salters doesn't need winded up. He is in full flow. Still, he glances at Ruxon's car and wonders why he's back. Once again, Ambrose drives into Hillier Street and parks outside the bank's bullion bay. The wind and the sleet have moved on, and the air is seriously motionless. This is, Ambrose's expression is one of unease. I don't know. Don't you think this is a bit weird? Is this to accentuate the point? His eyes shoot from one mirror to the other. I mean, look at this place. We may as well be removing furniture, except we're removing lorry loads of cash, and there's not a peeler about to stop us. One thing's for sure, Billy, that's his friend, says jovially. All banks should be this considerate. It's almost too easy. Now you're putting the scud on us. I just only get up and lower the tailgate. We haven't got all night to hang around here. No sooner has Ambrose lowered the tailgate than the bullion bay opens and Liam and Declan, the bank employees, appear. Only 2 trolleys, Billy asked Liam. That's all the time for, Liam says. Jack knows all about it. Okay, load up, Billy says. Come on, chop chop. As the loot lorry pulls out of Hillier Street, Ambrose observes the front of the bank. 4 kids dressed as goths walk past. 2 bus drivers and their inspectors hurry to a nearby watering hole. A businessman with a swinging umbrella ignores Salters. Repent, sinner! Salters yells at the businessman, for the wages of sin is death. Ambrose is standing now. Ambrose is sitting looking at this here in the lorry. I don't get any of that, Ambrose said softly, nodding to Salters. I mean, I effing love sinning, and the wages of sin are great. What's that, Billy says? I said I love sinning. Billy's eyes are elsewhere. It has its benefits. Ambrose looks over his shoulder into the back of the lorry. How much do you think there is? Billy half turns. What? 8 mil? 9? About that. Ambrose shakes his head in amazement. This is one to tell your kids about. when you're about to kick the bucket, that is, we're not home yet. Now who's putting the scud on us?
Oh, that's good. And, you know, you really do capture the sound of of uh, Belfast in that area. You could see, though you doesn't say, you could see the darkness in that, and you could see him kind of skulking around in that. So it's really wonderful how you were able to put that together. Now, in that light, now the your when you were growing up in Belfast, I know you have kind of your past has been somewhat checkered, and that's probably where you draw the material. Can you speak on say like you know how what it was like growing up in Belfast when you were?
Yeah, well, I was born and reared on the Falls Road in Belfast. We lived in Peel Street, and Jerry Conlon of the Guildford Four was my next door neighbour. And we had a great childhood, and with no money as such. I mean, I can't remember. I remember being on one holiday for a week until I was married virtually, until I was married. And but what a great life. We had great times, and they were very carefree times. There were times when kids could go out and play all day and they hadn't to worry about any of the worries that kids have now in case there's pedophiles and stuff. But you had none of that. It was just carefree. And we had a great childhood. Poor, but we had a great childhood. And Jerry, as I say, was my best friend, and he and I were inseparable. And but my father, I mean, how did I get involved with republicanism? I think that was what you were sort of like leaning into.
Yeah.
Well, my father.
Just one thing, Jerry Conlon. Now, can you explain who he is, just for people who don't know?
Yeah, Jerry Conlon was one of the Guildford Four. Jerry was an innocent guy, along with others, who was in London at the time of the Guildford bombing. The Guildford bombing, I think, killed 4 people. And but he was in London. Jerry was a bit of a hippie. He was one of these good time kids, same age as me. He went to London because he didn't want to be in Belfast. He didn't want to be involved in the trouble. He had no politics whatsoever, none whatsoever. And he was in London. He was smoking a bit of dope. He was seeing girls. He loved to battle on the horses. He was just, for one thing, he was a bit of a hippie. Absolutely no interest in anything. And this bomb went off in Guildford, and the British cops needed to put the nail somebody with it, and they nailed 4 totally innocent people. Jerry Conlon, Paddy Armstrong, Paul Hill, and a girl, I forget her name right now, but they nailed them anyway, and they got life, and they knew nothing about it. Jerry actually said they beat a confession out of them. They beat a confession out of them all. Paddy Armstrong was stoned when he was arrested. He hadn't a clue what was happening. Said he was signing a bit of paper and he signed it, and it was actually a statement of admission. So they knocked these 4 hippies off. They done them for life, and Jerry spent 15 years in jail. And Jerry was a great scene about Jerry coming out of prison when their charges were quashed in the Old Bailey, and you see him rushing out of the Old Bailey with his 2 sisters on his arms. He puts up his arm. I'm an innocent man. I done 15 years for something I didn't do, and that's a famous scene. And it was actually Jerry's life was captured on film by Daniel Day-Lewis in the film In the Name of the Father. And so that's who Jerry Conlon is, and he was my best mate. He and I were just fantastic. And he actually said to me to read his book, Tim, before he died. I said to him, "Your book's been written. You've read it yourself. Wrote your own biography. There's been a film made about you. What more do you want?" He says, "My life didn't start until I got out of jail. That's when the real Jerry Conlon story begins. And I want you to do it." By that stage, I'd already written a couple of books and he loved them. So I says, "Okay, fair enough, I'll do it, but I can't do it right now." He says, "No, but you will do it, yes." And then we were told he had 2 weeks to live. He sent for me. I went down to see him in the hospital. And he said to me, "You're going to do that?" Yes. And that was very, very emotional. I mean, I'll never forget it. As I was walking out, he said, "I love you, Richie."
Yeah, he was. you wrote a book about Jerry, and then and it's I think it was actually I believe it was supposed to be made a play. Is that correct?
Well, it is a play. It
Yeah.
was actually supposed to be on the Lyric Theatre in Belfast. The day that Belfast locked up for the first time, it was on that whole, the run was a 10-day run in the Lyric Theatre, and it was sold out. And they had to cancel it because of COVID. But I mean, it'll be back again, I'd say June or July.
And that it was based off your book, right?
It's based on the book, yeah. It's entirely on the book. It's written by me and a local playwright called Martin Lynch.
Now, is that? Do you know if that the play will be going to the States, or it's just unknown yet at this point? I guess
Well,
it has to be off first, right?
Yeah, well, Martin's also the producer, and he's definitely talking about bringing it to New York. And I don't know if it'll go where. I mean, I don't know the production end of this, but he's talking about bringing it to the Edinburgh Festival, and he's talking about bringing it to New York, and it's a very strong play. It's a very strong play, not because I wrote it and Martin wrote it, because there's so much material. I mean, Jerry ended up with Jerry got £1 million from the British government and told to clear off. And he 15 years in jail. He didn't know how to work the cash machine. Crossing the road was a major operation for him. And he hadn't a clue about nothing. He'd done the £1 million in no time. And he most of it went up his nose. Yeah. You know, crack and coke, and then he went on to a very crack cocaine habit. He took himself out of London. London seemed to be a bit of the problem. Took himself away down to Plymouth, lived like a hermit for 5 years, broke the crack habit and came back to Belfast. Found out that a girl with whom he'd had a relationship 18 years earlier had a kid, and it was his, and he knew nothing about it. And her and him got back together. They were like Darby and Joan. And here he had a ready-made family. He had somebody who cared for him, and he had a girl who was Queen's University studying law. So, and he had this great feeling of redemption. You know, this guy had been down at the bottom. He'd been in the abyss, and he crawled up the walls and got out of it. It's a great story.
Yeah, that's great. And you know, that's a story of many people who, you know, they do it for their children, and you know, they say have a hard time doing it for themselves. So now, have you had like relatives that were in the Republican movement?
Oh yeah, my whole family's all been in the Republican movement. Literally, my father was a major IRA man in the 1940s. He was actually the commander of Belfast at one stage, and he was interned without trial in the 1940s. And then he was in that campaign, and then another campaign started in the 50s. IRA campaign started in the 50s, and then he was interned again in the 50s. And my whole family were steeped, his brothers and all were steeped in republicanism. One of his brothers, his youngest brother, Albie, was 18, and he and in those days all they had was hand pistols. Him and a cop had a wee private gun battle up in an area called Clonard, which lasted for about 2 hours before the cop got the reinforcements. Albie ended up getting 10 years in jail and 12 strokes of the cat o' nine tails. I mean, so that's the family that I came from. And my father's, one of his best friends was Billy McKee. Billy McKee was a legendary IRA man who virtually formed the division of IRA and started the campaign. It was the first Belfast Brigade OC of Belfast, and he started the campaign against the British after the curfew in the Falls in 1970. So that's the background I came from. I came from a pure Republican background. You know, I mean,
yeah. So that
was in my blood, and Billy McKee was my godfather. Right?
It was a natural transition for yourself to be more Republican, right?
Well, I was a very committed Republican, Tim. I believed, and I still believe, that Ireland deserves her freedom from Britain and is entitled to it. And I don't believe in armed struggle because it patently didn't work, right? I mean, John Hughes, as far as I'm concerned, was right all along. But that aside, I do believe, I'm a Republican. I believe in arms. I believe that Ireland and the people of Ireland are entitled to freedom, as Theobald Wolfe Tone did, as Patrick Pearse did, as James Connolly did, as all the rest of the Republicans down through the years did.
So, how did you get involved with? You were sentenced for 8 years for a bank robbery, right?
Yeah,
So,
Northern bank robbery. But it wasn't as big as this one.
yeah, right. So, and that brought you into meeting with a lot of the hunger strikers in the 80s.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, I'd already been interned without trial twice myself in the early 70s. It was on the Maidstone prison ship, and then it was in Long Cache on 2 different occasions. So, in 1976, the British ended political status for prisoners. They were trying to criminalise the struggle, and they were trying to do it through the prisoners, and the prisoners rebelled. We refused to wear the prison uniform, which we called the monkey suit. And consequently, we were locked up in our cells for 4 years, and we were literally, there's no windows. We broke all the windows. We were on a dirty protest. I'll not go into that, but it was pretty gruesome. We were on a dirty protest. We didn't shave. We didn't wash. We had beards down to our belly buttons and lower. We were stinking. And but this was all part of the protest. We got murdered. Got the crap beat out of us by the screws, and in an attempt to break us, and they didn't. It was 300 of us, and always the figures never really went. A blanket man didn't really go below 300, and the screws called us the 300 Spartans, and they couldn't break us.
Yeah.
And then in 1981 we had the hunger strike, and I was PRO. The PRO of the prisoners is usually the person who's next to the OC. I was the PRO, and me and Vic McFarlane made decisions on the inside as to how the hunger strike would progress and who would be on it, etc. And that's how I became involved in it.
and the PRO is like the public relations, right?
Public relations officer. I put out the statements. He and I, there's a couple of others as well, but we would have been the think tank. We would have been the think tank of the prisoners. We could have been the guys who were saying, what happens if, how are we going to counter that? You know, that sort of thing.
Right. I remember when I was when we were in Chicago. I remember when Bobby Sands and they had protests here in Chicago. So I remember that quite well. Now, how did you you've written several books and you were writing for the PR, doing PR work. How did you develop your writing style? I mean, how did you? Because I mean, really, it didn't seem like you the way you grew up that you were kind of destined to be a writer.
Well, when the troubles started, believe it or not, I was doing A levels, which is a very high level exams, and then it was just one. It's just next to Queen's. It's next to university. And then when the troubles started, I had to go on the run, so that was all put in the back foot. And then in no time at all, I was in jail on the Maidstone. So that was all had to be set aside for the struggle. So I mean, it wasn't, a titter wit. And then I would say my writing came basically, I would say, from the blanket protest. I was writing columns. There was about 6 or 7 of us, and Bobby Sands was Bob's idea. Bob was saying, what we need to do is write columns and send them to everyone. And we always focused on America. America to us. I'm not saying that because I'm talking to you, but America to us was the key to breaking the Brits, the will of the British, right? Because they were very, very sensitive about America. So we were sending out, I was writing wee columns out too, and you've done it on cigarette papers, that you'd roll up a cigarette in. Mm-hmm. You'd have put 2 of them together, and we could have written both sides of it. Tiny, you need a magnifying glass to read it. But we would have made our points on that magnifying on that cigarette paper and smuggled them out. And then our guys on the outside would have sent them to prominent people in America, the trade unions, the universities, right? the AOH, whoever, the people who were opinion formers, we sent them the comms. And that's basic where, and I always try to make it different. I always say, what's another way of saying in the beginning, at the start, and then I'd have about a dozen different ways of saying it. It's like, and that's basically where it came from. In that sort of way, when I started writing seriously, that attitude of never, I always try never to have, never to say something easy. Always look for, in my view, always look for a novel way of saying something. In the Jerry Conlon book, for instance, I wanted to say that Jerry made friends. He made friends with everyone. He was a talking machine. He'd have been, he was great at ingratiating himself. And you could have said Jerry Conlon was great at making friends, whereas I said, right, Jerry Conlon made friends like hillbillies made moonshine, right? And that's the way I write, and I try to put a sentence together, right, that is different, that you're going to say, not bad. And that's what I do, and that came from the blanket, because it's boring writing the same message all the time. So you try to think of different ways to form it.
Yeah, I noticed that you could tell by the sentences within the book, your book, Northern Heist, that you have the different voices, and it seems like you're able to capture each character in their own voice so you're be able to kind of to give personality to each of the characters, which I thought was really cool, that you're able to kind of say, and so you, in a way where you could say when they're speaking, who is speaking just by the way they're speaking,
Yeah,
so.
well, you'll know yourself, and in any organization, the boss guy talks with authority.
Yeah.
Right? No matter what it is, he talks with authority, and he's virtually unique. And what I wanted to do when I was writing Northern Heist, I wanted the reader to, I didn't want to just say, this guy was an idiot, or this guy was a fool, or this guy was a great guy. I wanted the reader to think what this guy thought. I wanted to get into his head. Why did he think in a certain way? Why did he react in a certain way? So to me, it was important to say such and such thinks, and then you'd go into his actual thought. And I mean, to me, it's a great way of describing a character. Not just, it's easy to say Tim is tall, handsome, and broad, right? But who is Tim really? You're not going to know who Tim is unless Tim tells you. And Tim, and I'm using the name in my books, or my book. Same with it's the same with Green's Gold. In my books, I actually say what they're thinking, and I like that because it expands on who they are and what they are and what they hope and what their aspirations are.
Now, this is the first book of fiction. This is your debut novel. Now, you've written several other books before that. Is that correct? And
yeah.
Why did you decide to do a fiction book now, and the other ones were nonfiction?
Well, you see, Northern Heist was actually 11 years in the making. I mean, I thought, when the Northern Bank robbery occurred, everyone was talking about it, and I happened to be sitting with my daughter, Bernadette, and we were down doing Christmas shopping, and we went into a wee pub called the Duke of York. It's one of the famous wee cobble streets, one of the famous pubs in Belfast, and we're sitting having a pint. She doesn't drink, she's having a Coke, and having a pint, and we're just talking about it, and everybody's saying, the IRA done it, the IRA done it, the IRA done it. And I says, what if the IRA didn't do it? And that was the nucleus of Northern Heist, that one sentence, because all books start with one thought, and that one thought is usually a what if. What if the IRA didn't do it? And we looked at each other and we just started chatting. And within the hour, I had the protagonist already in my mind as to what type of person he is. I actually had his name. I said, you know what? We'll call this geezer Ructions. We'll call this guy Ructions, right? Because what is Ructions? Ructions is mayhem, havoc, chaos, right? And that's what I wanted to convey to this fella. If you mess with him, there's chaos coming your way. So, and that was the nucleus, that was the seed, Northern Heist. problem was for me was at the time was that I had another two books to write. I had to write Afterlives, which was the second Hunger Strike book, and then Jerry nailed me to write his book. So I didn't really get a good run at Northern Heist until about 10 years later. I had time to literally sit down, plot the story, and then actually write it. I loved writing it. I loved writing fiction because you're so unencumbered. You can go wherever the hell you want, and nobody can stop you. It's in your head, Whereas if you're writing the biography, for example, of Jerry, you have to relate to the facts. In Northern Heist, I could have called Ructions an Eskimo, and who cares? It's me it's my book, and I love that. I love the freedom that novel writing gives you.
So was it hard to sell the idea of a fiction book to publishers since you did nonfiction before?
Well, it was at the start. It was because the working title of Northern Heist was Greed. Right? That was the title that I had at the start, and the publishers didn't like it. And we sent it out, and it was about 14 rejections. And if you're going to be a reader, you need to be ready for rejection. You need to be used to it. And Bernadette again, my daughter again, and I we're scratching our heads and saying, "Why are they knocking this back? Why? This is a great story. Why are they not taking it? This is me." And then she turned around and said to me, "No, I tell you what it is." And then this is in the first book, this had to be rewritten. You killed Ructions. I says, what? In the original, I had Ructions having a shootout with his antagonist, right? A guy called Tiny Murdoch. And Tiny shoots him. I said, oh, have something there. So I thought about it, and I took the book away, and I completely rewrote the third part of it, where Ructions survives. Right, I'm not going to go into any more because of for readers. But immediately, the first guy was sent it to didn't even do fiction. He was totally factual books. He jumped on it, and that was it away.
But it also opens up the opportunity if you wanted to write a following book, which I think is something you're working on, right?
Well, I have written the follow-up book, and it's a great yarn too. It's called Göring's Gold. Göring being Hermann Göring, the Reichsmarschall of Greater Germany during the Second World War, number 2 to Hitler. And I don't want to go into that either. That's a great, in my view. It wouldn't be the first person who's read it said it's better than Northern Heist, but I don't know. But Ructions is central to this as well, right? It's a follow-on. It's Ructions, and it's the same characters all over again. But it's like a treasure hunt. And it was very, very good. Well, I think it is. It's not for me to say it's very, very good. It is for me to say it's very, very good. It's great.
Yeah, I guess I can't ask you if Ructions makes it through the second book, but actually, as we sit here right now, there's been a lot of violence in Northern Ireland in the news here in America, and we see pictures of burning cars and such. Do you think? Can you speak about what's going on, and what's like the root causes, or maybe how can we get past this moment, or what caused it in the first place?
Well, Tim, this all goes back to Brexit. The Britain leaving the European Union, and there was Brexit negotiations, and the European Union has a land border. The Republic has a land border with Northern Ireland, so the European Union had to protect their land border with a non-European country, i.e. the UK. So it was agreed by both parties that there wouldn't be a land border in Ireland, but the European Union still needed to vet goods coming into the EU through Ireland. So they put a virtual land border in the middle of the Irish Sea, whereby they look at foodstuffs to make sure they're up to standard, stuff like that. And really, this all came about through the folly of the main loyalist unionist party, the DUP. they had an opportunity when Theresa May was Premier of Great Britain to accept a deal that she worked out whereby the whole of the UK would remain within the European single market and there would be no hindrance at all on goods. But they voted against that. They voted for a hard Brexit, and the consequences of that there was a border down the Irish Sea. So it's unionism's complaining, but it's self-inflicted. The DUP are a party that has traditionally relied on a one-word policy statement, no. They say no to everything. On this occasion, they said no to the wrong thing. So they've got this situation. They're saying to themselves that this is actually a step towards a united Ireland. And it actually isn't, but they're that hyped up, they're that worked up about it, and there's kids, there's sinister elements in the background, stirring the pot and trying to create a situation where there's violence on the street. And most of the violence, it's not that bad, believe it or not. It seems to be that bad from where you are, but from here, I mean, it's in terms of, I've seen hundreds of riots. It's really not that bad, but the point is, it's happening, and it hasn't happened because of Prince Philip died. But there are sinister elements stirring it up, and what you have is another element of this here, and that's recreational rioting. That's kids rioting for the sake of it, and it's a sort of a form of enjoyment, and it's bad leadership. Bad leadership is at the back of all of this, and a refusal to move away from the primal position that unionism has always had in Northern Ireland. Bear in mind, the state of Northern Ireland was created through a sectarian headcount. I mean, they call Northern Ireland Ulster. There's 9 counties in Ulster, and they originally wanted to cut off from the rest of Ireland in 1921 during the treaty talks, etc. They wanted the 9 counties, and then they did a count and says, if we bring them other 3 counties in, there'll be too many nationalist Catholics. So they let Cavan, Donegal, and Monaghan remain within the Republic, and they kept the 6 counties where they had a 2-to-1 majority. And so they were in power in perpetuity. And that's the way they wanted it. All of a sudden, the demographics have changed. The nationalists are virtually, there's a nationalist majority. And it's very, very soon, I think, you're going to see a nationalist first minister. And when that happens, the penny will drop that the game's up. Right? That we are on a countdown to a referendum on a united Ireland.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. I was wondering if that was going to be the case. Did it think that we were going to see a united Ireland in our lifetime?
Well, it's very possible. I mean, I think it's very possible. Again, there are different factors. It looks to me as if Scotland's going to secede from the Union. They have an election coming up, I think it's this year. And all the polls are saying that the Scottish Nationalist Party are going to have an overwhelming majority, 65% of the vote. And they have said that they want to pull away from the UK and be an independent country. If that happens, and I think it's going to happen, right? Very soon. I mean, I'm talking about within the next year or so, maybe 2 years, 3 years at the most. If that happens, then Northern Ireland is on a countdown as well.
So is that like a binding referendum, or is that a non-binding referendum? Do you know what I mean?
Well, it would depend on the attitude of the British government. I mean, it would be Boris Johnson has said that he'll not be given a referendum in Scotland, never mind Northern Ireland. But the Good Friday Agreement, it's written into the Good Friday Agreement, and it's a central point of it that should a majority in the north of Ireland wish to secede from the UK, then the British government will not stand in their way, and they are duty bound to facilitate a referendum. And I think I would say most definitely within the next 10 years, that's going to happen. And that referendum, if you look at the trends, and I mean, again, the DUP leadership has been so pivotal in this. They've been so stupid because they have created this division, right? They have people of Northern Ireland, the 6 counties, voted to stay within the European Union, right? During the Brexit referendum, and they were kept in against their will. And there's a middle sort of class who have economic and social ties with Europe, and they like the thought of being in the big marketplace, right? And Britain have absolutely made they are in trouble because there's nobody really. They're not doing the trade deals they thought they were. The utopia that Boris Johnson and co promised hasn't materialized. Living conditions are worse. Commerce is worse, right? And the European Union, Ireland wouldn't be a big deal for Ireland to, if they won the referendum, the North will automatically be back within the European Union, and that is appealing to the middle ground, the middle soft unionism, right? And it's going to get even more appealing the more demonstrably severe Brexit is on social conditions.
This would be a good time to raise our here and should be on top of that. But before we do have a comment from John Doyle. He's commented on YouTube that Richard's father, Harry, was part of a 7-man escape team, which 5 got away, and my father, meaning John Doyle's father, and Richard's father stayed to fight back the Screws, who were in hot pursuit, 1941 Crumlin jail. So
that's right.
That was
his father must be Pa Joe Doyle. He was a great friend of my father's.
Yes, that was John Doyle's comment. And before we invite Martin to join you and Tim, I want to remind everybody on that you may ask questions. Raise your hands if you're in the Zoom, and put them on the chat if you're on YouTube. So Martin is unmuted, and we're kind of in your area, Martin. So I thought I'd just turn it over to you.
Danny, I want to thank you, Tim, Chris, everybody for putting this on. And I want to begin, Richard, I just want to congratulate you. There's something about crime dramas, you know, whether it's The Godfather, whether it's Goodfellas, whether it's The Departed. And me, I have a particular fondness for old James Cagney movies. There's something about stories like that where you root for the anti-villain, whatever you want to call him. You watch him, you're hoping that he succeeds somehow. And, you know, even though they're doing terrible things or ordering up killings or robberies or tiger. And this is a great story in that line. And it just puts it right in the middle of Belfast with authentic locations and dialogue, pure Belfast telling of the story. So I just want to congratulate you on that first, but I'm going to devote my questions as the Freedom for All Ireland chairman. Just 2 quick questions on that. I'm always telling everybody, and a lot of us believe, I just want your opinion, that what we do in the AOH in terms of Freedom for All Ireland, whether it's to give grants to things like Belfast National Graves or Green Cross, whether our political help, the political pressure we put on the British, all of those things that they really help are important in whether we're ever going to see a united Ireland. And just as somebody who was a prisoner in Lankesh during the hunger strike, as somebody who's been a political observer in the North and an activist since then, how important is what we do in America? The AOH leading the way, of course, is the oldest and largest Irish American organization. How important are all those things in terms of having an impact on the British, in terms of pushing things towards justice, towards a united Ireland?
Well, Martin, it's no exaggeration, and I'm not saying this because I'm on this show, but it's no exaggeration to say that America is critical. Because who else do the Brits listen to? They don't listen to, they're out of Europe, so they're not going to listen to the European Court of Justice. The only people who have real influence on and on the British or the Americans. And you take Joe Biden, for example, the president. Joe Biden, the minute he came in, made it very clear there'd be no trade deal, right? If there's a border in Ireland, right? And so the British are very conscious of this, and that's the pressure that America brings, right? And the AOH and all those American organizations that contribute in their own way are crucial to the cause of Irish freedom. And they've always been so, right back to John Devoy and De Valera. I mean, I'll give you a perfect example of how important, and it's still as relevant today as it was then. De Valera, during the Irish Civil War, 1918-21, spent the whole of the war in America trying to muster up support. I mean, that's how important America is. And if you take the campaign that the IRA fought against the British, our people, we totally focused on American opinion, right? For whatever, and even during the hunger strike, how crucial was America? America was, the longshoremen came out. We heard about, who's these longshoremen? Who are they? They're actually dockers. And we heard about them in Long Kesh. And there was such a cheer. And that's the significance of America. America is crucial to the cause of Irish freedom.
And the other thing I just want to ask you before I get off, allow for other people to come on. I'm always nervous. I can remember being in school, and you were allowed to drink at 18 then, so I was just legal. And it was at an event, and it was a guy named Martin Lyons, who was very close friends with Sean McStephen, who was the head of the IRA. And he had just been over with Martin McGuinness and Ivor Bell and Jerry Adams at a session negotiation with the British. And this guy, Martin Lyons, came in. He had talked to Sean McStephen, and he said they were over there. They told the British there's only one way to stop this war, and that's to release our prisoners and get out of Ireland, declare your intent to go. And next time they're going to be back very soon, and they're going to get a united Ireland, and we're going to get a united Ireland within 5 years. So every time I hear somebody say within 5 years or 10 years, we're going to get a united Ireland, I get nervous. And I'm running out of 5-year and 10-year periods. Do you think this time we're really going to see it in your and my lifetime?
Yeah, I do, Martin. I do. I do. I think for the first time, the politics are changing. The politics is changing because the population, this huge population swing towards the nationalism. I mean, you go to Queen's University. Queen's University is almost 80% Catholic nationalists because most young unionists go over to Great Britain to the universities over there. There's a huge change. There's a sea change in attitude. There's a sea change in demographics, right? And as I say, I mean, I think within 3 or 4 years, if not next year, there's an election next year. And it could well be that Sinn Féin will have a first minister. And the psychological impact of a Shinner being first minister on your average unionist who has been used to ruling the roost from 1921, never been anyone else in the pivotal position. The thought of a Sinn Féin or a nationalist being first minister will be absolutely catastrophic on the unionist psyche. And bring it on, I haven't got a problem with it.
Okay. And do you think just these riots, that sort of thing, that we're going to see more of that as we get closer to a united Ireland? Because it's the only answer that it's the only answer loyalism or the DUP even now seems to have, is to try and cause problems, cause violence, or encourage it, or say, oh, we have to listen to this, that's going to be an issue as we go further.
Well, I mean, at the back of what you're saying is that we're going to riot and we're going to intimidate you into, say for example, there was a Sinn Féin first minister and there was huge riots as a result of it. The premise behind the riots would be that we're going to riot because we don't like her being first minister, right? And you better listen to us. And it's a gun to the head of whoever's in control. It's intimidation, and you can't allow it. And will it happen? I don't know, because there are elements within loyalism who are saying we'll fight. Fight who? The Catholics? It's not our fault. They won't fight. The British government. Supposing the British government says the majority of people in the north, if there is a referendum, want the United Ireland, we will work towards that end in 10 years, just like the way they did in Hong Kong, right? We will try, Ireland will be united in the 10-year, 15-year period. What are they going to do? Who are they going to fight? There's hard reality somewhere kicks in, and they have to say, de facto, we're here, this is what's happening. And some will leave, some unionists will leave. I hope they don't, because they're industrious people, but some will leave and some will stay, and they'll all be welcome. There's nobody's going to say, "You aren't Irish people. You're more than welcome," and that's the way it'll be. But there will be rats. Of course, there'll be rats here and there. But I mean, it's not going to. It's not going to be politically that significant.
Okay, Danny, you can take it away with other questioners or panelists.
Thank you, Martin. We have a question via text from our national vice president, Sean Pender, who's listening today. What makes his book appeal to a studio and want to make a movie?
The book itself is very, very real. You read the book, and I think that the book actually grips you and brings you into this sort of maelstrom of not chaos. It's ordered chaos, right? And you end up. It's a strange. And Martin touched on it. You end up actually rooting for the villain. The villain in the piece is the guy called Ruxus who organizes the bank robbery, and you end up sort of way rooting for him. And it would make a great film because it's so real and it's different. It's a different book. It's not like what I was very conscious of was I didn't want a detective book where the cop always catches the villain, because police catch about 7% of criminals. Well, they do over here anyway. But I wanted a book that was real, that you could envisage, and I think there's a great film in it, or television series.
Thank you. Next up, we have a good friend of the AOH from just down the road from you in Drumnaquilly, one of our members who's somewhat transplanted, Eamon Daly. Eamon?
Thank you, Danny. First of all, I want to thank you, Richard, first of all, for all your sacrifices. You have an amazing story, and it's great to hear it now. I'm living over here for 18 years. There's one thing you said that really hit the nail on the head to me: recreation of violence. That's what's been going on over here this last couple of weeks. It's stopped now, but it was all teenagers, and then another 200 groups of teenagers all holding up their cell phones to record it.
Yeah.
There's no speeches, no nothing, and it only happened in two places: Derry, right? And it didn't start in Derry till about 4 days. They got jealous of what was going on in Belfast. They says, "Oh, we want some attention now too." But there was no speeches. They had no cause whatsoever. It was a total joke. It was just, it was young people that are bored. They had nothing else to do, and it's a way that they were letting out this frustration of being bored.
100%. Couldn't agree with you more. I mean, you're 100%. There's no structure to this. There's no political agenda to this.
Exactly.
But you know yourself, even there are guys, adults in the background, egging them on, pushing them forward.
Oh yeah, they're edging them on. Absolutely.
You know that.
They're encouraging it.
Yeah, but there's no political agenda. There's no demands. There's nothing. It's just violence, and it's stupid violence. I mean, it's against the police.
Yeah. You know what? All the police have to do is, it just seems so crazy. They got 5 trucks lined up there, and these kids are walking right up to them. What they need to do is shoot a net on top of them and put their asses all in jail.
No, I wouldn't disagree with that. I wouldn't disagree with that at all. I mean, that's happening.
I know Amazon delivers to Drumnaquilly.
Yeah.
When off this call today, I would like you to go to Amazon and order the book. And then we're going to have you give us a book report when we visit you in the next couple of months. One last comment. I'm going to turn it back to Tim and Ricky for the conclusion. Sean Hennessy comments and asks, "What can Irish Americans do to further the cause of a united Ireland? Seems most media won't cover this discussion. Thoughts on what we can do to further the cause?"
Well, support those who are fighting, are politically fighting for a united Ireland. And I mean politically. I don't mean support those who are engaged in armed struggle in any sort of shape, because to me that's counterproductive. That's run its course. Support those in any way you can, whether it's politically or whether it's monetarily. And Irish America has a huge voice. And what would be fantastic is if all the Irish American bodies came together as one and spoke as one, and then were able to lobby as one on the issues that are important to the cause of United Ireland. That would be a huge issue if all the bodies could come together.
Back to you, Tim.
Yes, just I had a question as well. That I know that there's a play will probably be starting back up soon after the pandemic restrictions are released. Is there any status in regards to the Jerry Conlon book becoming a movie?
No.
Nope, not at the moment.
The Jerry Conlon book, if I were to be honest, the Jerry Conlon book is such a human story. And I'm really surprised that the movie companies haven't moved in it already, because it is a story that had Johnny Depp wrote the foreword for that book, and it was a fantastic fellow can write. It was a fantastic foreword, but Jerry Conlon's book is gripping, right? And I'm really surprised that a movie company hasn't said, you know what, bang, let's take that.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And if you have a chance to order it, it's on Amazon or bookshops.org, your independent bookstores. It's a fantastic book. I said you can see it from here. And I want to thank Danny for hosting today's talks, and Martin for his insights, and Chris for your the wizard behind the curtain, so to speak, and especially you, Ricky. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been really a lot of fun, and I look forward to coming to see what you're coming out with next.
Well, try and get over to Belfast, and we'll maybe have a wee pint again. It's just the settle thing.
Absolutely.
But thank you very much.
We have a tradition ending, or I have a tradition ending with one of my favorite moments from the 1916 commemorations in the United States. But I'd be remiss if I didn't first ask Chris Cook for any closing comments. He's done a great job, and he's one of the finalists in the Pandemic Heroes that the Irish Echo is doing, and we're going to have an event next Friday. And I remind everyone to go to the Echo and vote for Chris. But Chris, what are your words for today? Any thoughts or questions?
Thank you, Danny. So I did have to dig out a book that wasn't written by you, but did have to pull this out of the closet, The Proven Innocent by Jerry Conlon. And I was a little touched by what he had written in it. Was life's struggles may weigh heavy at times, and all may seem lost, but inside of every man is an unquenchable flame that refuses to die. And I thought, especially with this year, that's a really important statement. Just want to pass that along from your buddy, Jerry.
Brilliant, Chris. Lovely fella. Jerry Conlon was 100% fantastic.
Well, Ricky, we look forward to meeting you face to face in Belfast, hopefully sooner than later. And this closing song kind of sums up the tie from the United States to Ireland, the historic tie. And although we're I love the ethnicity of the United States. I love to go to all the neighborhoods and all, especially in the big cities. But there's something special between Irish America and Ireland. And so we'll close with this and thank you. And God bless you and your family for giving us this Saturday evening on your time. Thank you for everyone that joined. We had over 60 people on today between YouTube and Zoom. And this will be on Zoom or YouTube moving forward, and we'll be promoting it. So all the rest of the Hibernians, between the men and the women and our families, we're well over 85,000. We want everyone to have a chance to buy this book. And thank you, Ricky.
Thank you so much, Danny. Lovely speaking to you guys. It's brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Tim.
There aren't lines of marching men in squadrons passed me by. No pipe did hum, no battle drum did sound its loud tattoo, but the Angelus bells or the leafy swells rang out in the foggy dew. Right proudly high in Dublin town hung there the flag of war. For 'twas better to die 'neath an Irish sky than at Suvla or Sudelbar. And from the plains of royal meads strong men came hurrying through, while Britannia's Huns with their long-range guns sailed in through the foggy dew. Our bravest fell, and the requiem bell rang mournfully and clear for those who died at Eastertide in the springing of the year. How the world did gaze with deep amaze at those fearless men, but few, who bore the fight that freedom's light might shine through the foggy dew. And back through the glen I rode again, and my heart with grief was sore. For I parted then with valiant men, whom I never shall see more. But to and fro in my dreams I go, and I kneel and pray for you. For slavery fled, all glorious dead, when you fell in